Okay, let's finally get our hands dirty and build a swarm. In fact, this swarm here, 3 manager nodes and 3 worker nodes. Now, in my lab here, in case you're following along, I've got 6 AWS instances, all of them running Linux with Docker 1.12 or higher. Now, you can pretty much rock and roll however you want here, so this could be anything from 6 bare metal hosts on premises, it could be VMs on your laptop, and obviously instances in the public cloud. It totally doesn't matter, and you know what? You can mix and match them pretty much how you like. Just as always, beware of network performance if you do that. The only absolute must though is Docker 1.12 or higher. Oh, okay, I've got mine named and IP'd like this. The thing that matters though is that they can all talk to each other. So, I'm going to jump onto manager 1 here and initialize the swarm. That'll make this machine the first manager. Then I'm going to jump on these 2 nodes here and join them as managers. Then these 3 down here are going to be joined as workers. And that'll be our 6 node swarm up and ready for applications. Right, well, here we are on manager 1 and we can see that I've got Docker installed and we're at version 1.12 or higher. Well, to initialize the swarm, we go docker swarm init. That's a new command as of 1.12, and it's fully optional, remember. But as soon as you whack this command in, you're stepping into a brave new world. So docker swarm init, then I like to give it a couple of parameters. First up, advertise address. This tells Docker no matter how many NICs and IP addresses this machine's got, this is the one to use for swarm related stuff, like exposing the API. Now, if the machine's only got a single IP, okay, you don't technically need to specify this. But how many production machines are there in the real world that have only got a single IP? Not so many in my experience. So I always use this flag, and the next one as well, right? So I recommend you do. In fact, I've had issues just this last week in a setup with multiple IPs where I was trying to do something really quickly, so I skipped the flags. Just said I always use them, never mind. Anyway, I paid the price. So create the habit starting now. Anyway, we give it its IP and we'll use port 2377. Then I give it the listen address as well. This is what the node listens on for Swarm Manager traffic, and I'll tell it the same address and port. Now for clarity, the addresses used here, well, obviously they need to be valid addresses on the node, but any other nodes that want to be part of this swarm are going to need to be either on the same network, or you're going to need routes or routes in place on your network so that those other nodes can reach this IP. Now, 2377 is not mandatory. You can actually go with any port that works in your environment. But the native Docker engine port is 2375, the secured engine port 2376, and I think the guys at Docker are talking to IANA trying to register 2377 as the official swarm port. So, long story short, if 2377 works for you in your environment and you're looking to standardize on something, it's as good a place as any to start. Right then, let's run that. Okay, we look like we're in business. We can see here that Swarm's initialized and this machine's a manager. Looking good. But a couple of important things to note. This command here is the exact command you need to run on a worker that you want to join to this swarm. If you look at it, we can see it includes a token that without which no machines are going to be joining as a worker. And we'll use this one in just a second, so we'll see it. But before that, the instruction here to add a manager, I think it's a bit weird, right? So let's grab it and we'll run it. And look at that. We get another command that looks pretty much the same as the one above. Only it's not. Well, the token's not the same. But let's do this first. Same command again, but switch out manager for worker. Right. So, anytime you need to know the command and token to join a worker or a manager, these are the commands. Docker swarm join token, and then either manager or worker. But look at the last section of each token and see how they're different. When joining a new node to the swarm, the way that the swarm knows whether it should be a manager or a worker totally depends on the token that you give it. One token's for managers to join, the other for workers. But let's just see what Docker info shows us. Right, magic. Here we see swarm active, our node ID. Yes, this node's a manager, and the swarm's got, one manager and one node. Interesting. Not so much, right? Remember, manager nodes are also worker nodes, so we've really only got one node in the cluster. It's just doing two jobs, manager and worker. But we want to join some more nodes. And we'll go with a manager first. So, yeah, this one's the manager join token, so we'll have that. And we'll swing over to manager 2. Paste in the command. And then the obsessive compulsive part of me kicks in. Like I said, I always add these two lines here. Advertise address and listen address. But you've got to be careful, right? You've got to use manager 2's addresses here. So manager 2's own IP here that we want to use for swarm. Give it the wrong address or the address of another machine, and I am speaking from experience here, things are going to be unpleasant. Well, we'll give that a try, and we're joined as a manager. So a docker node ls here. This is a new subcommand in 1.12, by the way. But as we can see, two manager nodes, both accepted, ready and active. And only one of them is leader, yeah? More on that in a second. But you know what? This little asterisk here, this is interesting. This tells me which machine I'm logged onto and what I ran the command from. So manager 2. Anyway, let's add a worker. So if we skip back to manager 1 here and grab that command and join token for workers. Okay. Well, let's whack that in here on manager 3. Now, you'll see why I'm making a node called manager 3, a worker, in just a second. So bear with me, it's not actually a mistake. Obviously, I'm going to add the advertise and listen flags here. Get into the habit, seriously. But that's it. Joined as a worker. Take a look at the swarm now. Yeah. Of course, you can only run docker node ls from a manager, and this station here is a worker. So back over to manager 1. Let's run it here. And 3 nodes. Now, we know that manager 3 is joined as a worker. Well, we know that because it said so when we ran the command. But we can also derive it from the output here, due to the fact that there's nothing in the manager status column here. And you know what? While that's interesting and good to know, well, we actually want it to be a manager. Well, that's fine. We just go docker node promote. I'll grab its ID up here. You can use its name as well if you want, but I like this. And flipping heck, instant promotion to manager. Now, if only your HR department could get its act together like that. Well, docker node ls again. Magic. This reachable here means it is definitely now acting as a manager. So, that's our 3 managers working together, with one acting as leader and the others backing it up and referring commands over to it. Now to add our 3 workers. So, first up, let's grab that worker join command. This one, yeah. And let's do worker 1. Okay? But you know me, I'm going to add the advertise and listen addresses. Now, like I said before, you've got to be sure that you're adding the correct addresses for each node. These are the node's own IPs that it's going to use for swarm. Okay? So worker 2, same again here, but these are worker 2's IPs. Alright? And last but not least, worker 3. Again, worker 3's IP. Okay? So I reckon if we scoot back to manager 1 and a docker node ls again, bingo! 3 managers and 3 workers. The managers are the ones that have got something in the manager status column at the end. The workers, they don't. Though technically, actually, yeah, 3 managers and 6 workers, seeing as how each manager also acts as a worker. Now, a couple of things to remember. See back somewhere up here how only one manager is leader, or primary, right, depending on who you're talking to. Well, it's only that leader that can affect changes against the cluster, but we can issue commands on or to any of the managers. They'll just proxy those commands onto the leader, who'll execute them. If that leader goes down, you know what? That's no problem. A new one gets elected as per the Raft protocol and the world keeps turning. So that's our swarm up. 3 managers and 3 workers, or I suppose 3 dedicated workers, but 6 worker nodes in total considering managers are by default workers as well. Blah 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 blah, Nigel. We are ready to start using services to deploy applications to our swarm.